Hey everybody, back for another episode. This time I'm talking to the incredibly multi-talented, one of my dearest friends, Sarah Palm. And my first guest, one of my best friends, Sarah Palm. Introduce yourself,
Yay,
Sarah.
hello.
So we've known each other for a while,
Yes.
for sure. We met at MSUM for film school. Started working together on that.
So, as Kyle mentioned, we did meet at MSUM in the film program in 2007. So that's how long we've known each other. So it's been a long
Been a
time.
while, yeah.
Been a while. So I did get my BA in film production from MSUM, and I minored in graphic communications with an emphasis in animation. And I also minored in theater. I went back to school and finished my theater degree. So I also have a BFA in theater performance from NDSU, North Dakota State in Fargo. And then a couple of years later, I went on to get my Master of Fine Arts in acting from the University of North Carolina at Greensboro. So I finished that in 2018, and since then I've been a working actress and teaching artist.
I like the fact that the first one in this album, because it's all chronological, is just a day, like, because this is just what we'd end up doing on occasion, was just literally a day both of us were bored, and we're like, hey, let's go around and take pictures outside, because it's snowing, and we literally have nothing to do. So yeah, we've got a couple photos that I took. But yeah, it was always fun, like, being able to go out and around and just like, hey, we're bored. I've got this idea. I've got this. Because we've had a bunch of collaborative thing. I think it was like me, Joey Kramer, Parker Shook, Pat Thompson. We're all kind of putting together. We're just trying to do a bunch of shorts here and there, and then you got roped into it. Chelsea Green got roped into it. I think that was right after we did the whole unicorn diatribes thing with me, Joey, Rob Ross, and Pat.
So you're the guy is something that I show to all of the people I meet.
It's so funny. Like, it's such a good premise of the anti, like, oh, so you're sleeping with my daughter? And it's wait, you're not sleeping with my daughter? Why aren't you sleeping with my daughter? Kind of thing. Yeah, that was super fun. And then, of course, obviously, you being an actress, we also had a couple, headshots. I think both you and I were like, these are really good, but headshots are so difficult.
Especially when you live in a smaller place like Fargo, North Dakota, where there's not a lot of acting work, especially not paid acting work. But as a performer, you need headshots. It's difficult because headshots are not only like, here's a nice picture of me smiling. They are expected to make people want to work with you, and also to show that you have some kind of range or like life happening behind your eyes. And they need to have good lighting, and they need to be framed correctly, and your hair needs to be right, and your makeup needs to be perfect, and you can't have a shiny spot on your forehead. And there are all of these different things you have to take into account, both as a photographer and as the person getting your photo taken. And it can be really, really hard to get one that both the photographer and the performer like. I know for me, generally, so like now, if I get my headshots taken by a photographer, and it depends on who it is, but it's a lot easier with someone that you know.
Yeah, like as from the photographer's perspective, like headshots are so difficult because you have to convey so much, but also keep everything so simple. Like, you don't want anything to distract the eye too much, so like you can't do too crazy of a background. You can't do, too expressive, because unless it's like a comedy, but then you also don't want it to be too dramatic on either side. You need to show a good range, but also keep everything contained. It's such a hard, balance to find with those headshots. I want to say these next few were actually the same day. Like we did the blue dress ones, which was this old, was it velvet? Or like
It's velvet, yeah.
yeah, which is why we were like we were not going outside in this.
Yeah, it's like a I assume 1980s, although I'm just sort of guessing, but like 1980s or early 90s velvet ball gown, and I still have it. It's very heavy.
Yeah, it's
Um,
really thick fabric for sure.
yeah, a lot of layers in the skirt. And it's really pretty, but I don't know, I mean, unless you were going to like a very fancy holiday dinner and you also live in Minnesota.
So we did that, and then we did the outdoor with the big poofy hat.
Yes.
Um, as you were just freezing your butt off in that dress. I think you just raced back to the car with me, didn't you? Like when we got done with the bridge.
Yes, that sounds right.
Yeah, and think about that, like, because even in your acting, like, you're not in always the most ideal circumstances, but we had to portray a mood with this. Like, how'd you get into that space, that headspace, while you were, freezing in cold?
Honestly, the hat was a big like driving force behind the overall mood of those photos. I think there's the one photo of me on the stairs with the fur coat and the fur hat, and then that old vintage wedding dress. And I think that the hat is very. It looks like something that someone in Russia would wear. Like that is what I think of when I see or wear that hat. And so in those photos, I think you think of Siberia and it's very cold and everything is dead, and then to be that kind of femme fatale character. So I think that that's probably something of what I was channeling for those photos was just this very like like an ice queen, like someone who's very used to the cold, and there's a certain strength in being able to not acknowledge it.
And then we had a couple from the zombie pub crawl, because of course
Yes.
we had to do a few from the zombie pub crawl. First year was you with the party hat and
Yes,
like
the
horns. Yep,
pinata.
the pinata. So how did you come up with that concept for that costume?
I remember that when it occurred to me, it was very much like a light bulb, like this would be a fantastic idea.
Yeah.
And I was very proud of the construction. The idea for just a regular pinata costume um, on Pinterest or somewhere where people take crepe paper, like crepe paper streamers, and you just cut little, which is what that costume mostly
Yeah.
was. It was crepe paper streamers that I had glued onto a dress. The burst stomach, which I did with just cardboard, again glued on there and painted, and candy falling out. Like the idea to make it a zombie thing really was totally just an original idea that popped into my brain.
The next year, I believe it was you as the zombie mermaid, which I think I only have like 6 photos of that. Like I don't know what I was doing that year, that it was just like, oh, I guess I'm only gonna do a couple of these.
Well, we have, because there's some really great ones, because we took a bunch as we were coming through that tunnel, and Anne's boyfriend Travis was with us as the Shaun of the Dead
Yes,
character.
yeah, we've got you attacking him as well. So then, yeah, lastly, we did one quick like boudoir session. So you contacted me and you were like, I wanted to try and do this, but I want somebody that I'm comfortable with.
I remember like the ones of the set that we took. Honestly, my favorite ones are probably the first ones that were just in the mirror, because that's probably more of who I am. It probably shows a little bit more personality, and I
Yeah.
was probably more comfortable too. I haven't done a lot of
Yeah.
that kind of thing. Doing boudoir stuff can be tricky, especially if you're not someone who frequently performs in front of people in like more scant clothing. Um, and generally, I don't. So it was a lot about creating a space that was safe and creating a space that was comfortable and finding the fun in doing boudoir shoots, because I think one of the things you see with a lot of especially like younger photographers or people who are kind of just starting with photography is everybody always wants to do boudoir shoots. And as a woman, and this may be true for men as well, but I know for me and like people that I am friends with who are female, there's something really exciting about the idea of having pictures of yourself where you appear sexy, where you look, it's empowering to have those, and whether or not you're taking them for someone else or just taking them for yourself, just to have those and be like, you see this is me and I look really good, and I was confident enough to be in my underwear in front of at least one other person.
And especially doing like the boudoir stuff, like you always want to have a fun atmosphere on the set, like you said, to keep everybody comfortable. Because yeah, like I said, I think I agree with you in the fact that those ones in the mirror, and I think those were like the first ones we did too, were like the best ones, because it is. And even like thinking, further on, now that I've done a lot of like burlesque, it's that tease is, that like it's that attitude and that tease that for sure we very much expressed in those ones. So yeah, Sarah, anything you want to like plug, or any like social media stuff you want to put out there?
If you like hearing the melodious sound of my voice, you might want to check out the Unexpected Podcast. You can find it at www.theunexpectedpodcast.com. And we are also on social media at The Unexpected Podcast on Instagram. We're on Facebook. And you can download the podcast from wherever you download your podcasts. We're on all the different streaming services. It is a B horror movie style, like radio play type podcast. And it was created mostly by graduates of the MSUM film program. So you might hear a lot of familiar voices if you know any of those people. And if you want to follow me, my Instagram is set to private, but if I like you, I'll let you follow me, and it's at sarah.epic.
All right.
On Instagram.
Thank you, Sarah. Love you. Stay safe.
Follow me at Knocked Out Films. Thanks for watching this episode.